Police Department.
I just went outside to smoke a cigarette. It looked like a scuffle between a couple. Well, when I saw her get out of the truck, her face is just all bloody.
On the evening of May 18, 2020, in the quiet town of Pella, Iowa, Julie Kuiper was at home tending to her 5-year-old child. It was a calm spring evening, just before 8:30 p.m., when Julie stepped outside her apartment complex, likely seeking a brief moment of peace in the cool, fresh air. By the garage doors of the building, she noticed a maroon-colored truck parked nearby, its engine humming faintly. Behind the wheel sat a woman, her presence subtle yet distinctly unsettling, casting an unexpected shadow over the stillness of the night. As Julie stood outside, her attention was drawn to raised voices coming from the direction of the maroon truck. The intensity of the argument quickly made it clear this was more than just a routine domestic dispute. Her unease deepened when she thought she saw one of the individuals step away from the vehicle, their face smeared with blood, a chilling sight that sent a jolt of fear through her. Acting swiftly, Julie dialed 911, her hands trembling as she recounted what she had just witnessed, knowing that something far more serious was unfolding before her eyes.
Pella Police Department.
Yeah, I live over at 21 Glenwood. I just went outside to smoke a cigarette, and it looked like a scuffle between a couple. Well, when I saw her get out of the truck, her face is just all bloody.
Do you have any idea what apartment she might have went in?
No, she looked like she just got in the car and left. Looked like a Cadillac, almost cream or light-colored off-white.
The police response was swift, arriving at the Glenwood apartment complex just moments after the white Cadillac, with its bloodied driver, had fled the scene. Officer Cody Rose of the Pella Police Department was among the first to respond. Approaching the maroon Ford F-150 parked near the garage, he discovered a woman slumped lifelessly in the driver's seat. She was later identified as 47-year-old Tracy Mondabaugh. The gravity of the situation was undeniable as additional officers from the Pella Police Department and the Marion County Sheriff's Office arrived to assist. Together, they worked urgently to administer emergency medical care to Tracy, fighting against time to save her life. Tragically, the officers' efforts to save Tracy were in vain. The medical examiner later confirmed she had been fatally stabbed, a single wound to her chest piercing her heart. Tracy Mondabaugh, a mother of 4, had been a resident of the same apartment complex where she was found. Investigators surmised she was attacked shortly after arriving home, as her seatbelt was still fastened when she was discovered. Outside the truck, investigators noticed a small but telling clue, a torn piece of blue latex glove, likely ripped during the violent altercation. Inside the vehicle, the aftermath of the brutal attack was evident. Blood and hair were collected for testing, though it was no surprise when Tracy's DNA dominated the samples. The evidence suggested she had fought valiantly against her attacker before succumbing to the fatal wound. The Ford F-150 Tracy had been driving, however, did not belong to her. A check on its registration revealed it was owned by Tracy's boyfriend, Nicholas Boat, with whom she lived in the complex. Further investigation tied the vehicle to another intriguing detail. Registered to Nicholas's former address was a silver 4-door Cadillac, a car matching the description Julie Kuiper had given to the police. This Cadillac was often driven by Nicholas's estranged wife, Michelle Boat. Lieutenant Shane Cox was dispatched to Nicholas Boat's previous residence, where Michelle was believed to be living. Upon arrival, a silver Cadillac sat in the driveway, its hood and wheels warm to the touch, indicating it had been driven just moments earlier. Remarkably, only 17 minutes had passed since Julie Kuiper's 911 call, and the two locations were less than 1.5 miles apart. Knocking on the door yielded no response, but the lights inside the home were on, hinting at someone's presence. While Lieutenant Cox continued attempts to make contact, Lieutenant Brian Biggett examined the Cadillac. What he found deepened the sense of foreboding. Blood spatter stained the passenger side mirror, and a necklace tangled with strands of hair was caught on a windshield wiper. Inside the car, gardening tools, including a hammer and other sharp objects, were strewn across the front passenger floor. Beside them lay a pair of disposable blue latex gloves. On the passenger seat sat a bag, and nearby, a pair of binoculars rested with their lens cap removed. Another blue glove was visible in the center console. Despite persistent knocking and calls, no one answered the door. As minutes passed and the blood on the vehicle became more evident, the tension mounted. It was clear the officers were closing in on a sinister trail of evidence, one that seemed to implicate Michelle Boat in a horrifying and calculated act of violence. Walking around the side of the house, Lieutenant Cox noticed movement through a bathroom window. Someone was inside, confirming that the house wasn't empty despite the lack of response. The sight heightened the urgency of the investigation as officers prepared to make contact. When the door finally opened, the officers were met by an apparently startled Michelle Boat. She explained that she had just been taking a shower and invited the officers into the house, her demeanor calm but watchful as they stepped inside. While Michelle spoke with officers, Lieutenant Cox swept the house for safety. In the basement, he found the washing machine running with a single outfit, a jacket, jeans, and undergarments inside. In the bathroom, car keys with a long dark hair tangled in the fob caught his attention, resembling the hair found on the necklace outside. In the kitchen, a calendar hung ominously on the wall. Starting March 12th, each day was marked with "gone," counting the days since Nick Boat, Michelle's husband of 20 years, had left her. On May 18th, the day of the murder, it read, "Gone 69 days." Nick had met Tracy Mondabaugh in February 2020 after an accidental friend request on Facebook. They quickly connected, and by April, they had moved in together. Michelle, however, struggled with the separation, her behavior growing increasingly erratic, including threatening calls, stalking, and violating no-contact orders. One voicemail she left for Tracy hinted at her growing instability. Later that same month, Tracy contacted the Pella Police Department to report Michelle Boat following her from Pella to Otoma. Michelle's obsessive behavior escalated further when she confronted Tracy during a lunch break with Nick at Vermeer Corporation. Approaching their truck, Michelle warned Tracy, "I will only tell you this once. Stay away from my husband." As investigators continued their work, a search warrant for Michelle's home yielded even more disturbing evidence. During Lieutenant Cox's initial walkthrough, he noticed the toilet running intermittently, as if it was clogged. Upon returning, officers removed the toilet tank lid and discovered a white towel inside. Wrapped in the towel was a blue latex glove stained with blood, with its fingertip missing, a perfect match to the fingertip found at the crime scene. Despite the mounting evidence, the knife used in Tracy's murder was never recovered. Michelle Boat was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Inside Michelle's Cadillac, investigators found further evidence: Tracy's hairs in the doorframe, blood on the steering wheel, and visible bruises on Michelle, consistent with a struggle. These injuries were documented at the time of her arrest and again 36 hours later. Yet Michelle pleaded not guilty, claiming the stabbing was a crime of passion rather than premeditation. The defense argued that Michelle acted out of desperation, not intent. While she admitted to stabbing Tracy, she claimed it wasn't planned but a sudden and impulsive act. The prosecution, however, painted a different picture. They detailed Michelle's actions leading up to the murder, captured by surveillance cameras throughout Pella. At 6:57 p.m. on May 18th, Michelle's car was seen trailing Tracy, first at a laundromat and then at a Burger King. Careful to avoid detection, Michelle parked out of sight as Tracy went about her evening, unaware she was being followed. The surveillance footage showed Michelle retrieving an unknown item from her trunk before continuing her pursuit. By 7:30 p.m., Michelle was parked near Vermeer Corporation, covertly watching Nick and Tracy share dinner in his truck. For over 30 minutes, she observed them before following Tracy back to the Glenwood apartment complex. The prosecution argued Michelle's behavior was deliberate and calculated. The gloves she wore, the stalking, and the countdown calendar in her home all pointed to a methodical plan fueled by jealousy and rage. For 69 days, Michelle had fixated on her husband's departure and his new relationship. On May 18th, her simmering anger boiled over into a violent and deadly confrontation. It's May 18, 2020, in Pella, Iowa, and Tracy Mondabaugh is maneuvering a pickup truck through the narrow lane of a Burger King drive-thru. Unbeknownst to her, she is not alone. She's being watched. Some might even say hunted. Parked nearby, the watcher sits in a Cadillac, eyes fixed on Tracy's every move. This hunter is consumed by rage, jealousy, and heartbreak, emotions simmering dangerously close to the surface. ready to explode. Michelle Boat's defense argued her behavior stemmed from heartbreak, not malice. The calendar, they claimed, reflected her grief over the sudden loss of her husband of 20 years. The timing was critical. Her separation coincided with the COVID-19 pandemic, which deepened her isolation and stress. These factors, the defense suggested, painted her as a desperate, emotionally shattered woman, not a cold-blooded killer. Nick Boat testified that he and Michelle owned two vehicles, the silver Cadillac, which Michelle often drove, and the red pickup truck, which Tracy had been driving the day she was killed. During his testimony, Nick recounted the start of his affair with Tracy and the last time he saw her alive. As he spoke, Michelle became visibly distraught, her emotions on full display in the courtroom. Michelle Boat took the stand in her own defense, describing the emotional devastation she felt upon discovering her husband's affair. She told the jury that his decision to leave her was both shocking and heartbreaking. In the immediate aftermath, Michelle admitted to drinking heavily for 2 weeks straight, a period she described as a blur of pain and despair. Her emotional collapse eventually led to her being hospitalized for mental health treatment for 5 days in late March, highlighting the depth of her struggle during that time. Michelle testified that by May 18, she was struggling financially, with only $6 left in her bank account. Her job in the hospital laundry service operated on an on-call basis, and she hadn't worked or earned a paycheck since her husband left. She told the jury that, with her remaining money, she drove to Culver's, intending to buy a chicken meal, but decided against it when the line was too long. Instead, she returned to the laundromat and began following Nick's red pickup truck. Her motivation, she claimed, was not malice but desperation, to see her husband and plead with him to come back home. Michelle admitted that when she followed Tracy to Nick's workplace, she chose to stay in her vehicle rather than approach him. She claimed she simply watched from a distance, unable to summon the courage to speak with him directly. Michelle testified that she followed Tracy to learn where her husband lived, intending to return later to beg him to come home. Despite finding the address, she still approached Tracy's truck. Michelle claimed she didn't have the knife initially and only grabbed it from her car after Tracy began hitting her. Overwhelmed by emotions, including the realization that the apartment complex was where she and Nick had lived as newlyweds, and the smell of cigarette smoke from the truck, she stated that she lost control in the heat of the moment. During cross-examination, Michelle claimed she wore gloves due to pandemic precautions, stating they were provided by her workplace and kept in her car. She could not recall retrieving anything from her trunk at Burger King, a point the prosecution suggested might indicate premeditation. When questioned about the gardening tools and sharp implements in her car, Michelle explained they were for protection after her husband left, denying any intent to use them in the attack. If Michelle had not planned to attack Tracy with the knife, the prosecutor questioned why she had continued to struggle with her. Tracy was still wearing her seatbelt, restrained in the vehicle, meaning Michelle could have ended the confrontation by simply stepping away. This raised doubts about Michelle's claim that the stabbing was a spontaneous act rather than an intentional attack. Michelle testified that her attempts to conceal evidence after the crime were done in a state of panic. She admitted to hiding the knife used to kill Tracy under her bathroom sink, but stated she had not revealed its location to police when questioned. At the time, she also denied any responsibility for the attack, further complicating her claims that the stabbing was an impulsive act rather than premeditated. The prosecution argued that Michelle Boat had countless opportunities on the evening of May 18th to stop, reconsider, and simply go home. They described her as a hunter methodically stalking her prey, carrying out a calculated plan for revenge. Her actions, they contended, demonstrated clear premeditation. In contrast, the defense highlighted how chaotic and poorly executed the murder was. The necklace tangled on the windshield wiper, blood spatter on the vehicle, and other evidence at the scene all directly tied Michelle to the crime, suggesting a lack of planning. 2 eyewitnesses at the complex also heard the argument and saw parts of the altercation. The defense insisted this could not have been a meticulously planned act, but rather an impulsive one. The jury, however, deliberated for only 45 minutes before reaching a unanimous verdict, reflecting the strength of the prosecution's case. On February 7, 2024, the Iowa Court of Appeals reviewed Michelle Boat's appeal and affirmed her life sentence. At the time of her conviction, Michelle was 56 years old. Tracy Mondabaugh is remembered as a loving and devoted daughter, sister, mother, grandmother, and girlfriend. Known for her sass, humor, and optimistic outlook, she brought light to those around her. Tracy is deeply missed by her 4 children, 10 grandchildren, and Nick Boat, who continues to mourn the loss of someone who touched so many lives. Do you believe Michelle Boat's actions were driven by premeditated intent? Or was this truly a crime of passion fueled by desperation and heartbreak? Could the outcome have been different if Michelle had sought help or support earlier in her struggles? Rather than allowing her emotions to escalate,